bottom line, the Stone Cold Sensei.
I have a lot of things I want to get off my chest.
This is The Pencil, a professional wrestling podcast starring Renny D and Friends. Thanks for listening to The Pencil. Subscribe to the show on iTunes and follow us on Twitter at Pencil Podcast.
All right, everybody. It is Tuesday, which means it's another fantastic episode of Professional Wrestling Talk with Travis Mester and myself here on The Pencil, coming every week to you on iTunes, PodBean, Stitcher, and YouTube. And God damn it, I'm telling you, the thing that makes me happy, Dirt, is that rolling back from Nashville, Tennessee last night, you decided to stop into the MKA, the 414, Milwaukee, Wisconsin, the condominium lakeside apartment studio to watch Monday Night Raw with yours truly. But for the listening audience, yeah, we watched Monday Night Raw, and that was great. And I made a point to kick Dirt's ass out of my house at 5:30 this morning, or make him wake up at 5:30, so I could get to the gym and clang and bang and get arms as big as John Cena. And God damn it, did I ever get a pump in today. Dirt's been out of the gym for a good 7 days. How much weight did you lose, Dirt, and how was Nashville, Tennessee?
Oh, first things first, Nashville, Tennessee was everything you could possibly expect it to be. It'll be a vacation I will never forget. You're right, I was out of the gym for too many days, but waking up at your place this morning, it was all last night we've watched together in a coon's age, and now we got to watch one. Getting up early this morning, get my 6-hour. When I got home, I didn't take a nap. I didn't lay around. What I did was do some laundry, get myself to the gym, and start getting back. But if I'm not going to do it, and on the pencil, you got to take responsibility for yourself. And I did a lot of damage to myself over the last 5-6 days in Nashville, Tennessee, and the surrounding area. But I'm back better than ever. I'm excited to talk Hell in the Cell. I'm excited to talk from last night and the next 3 to 4 weeks in WWE.
Yeah, you did a lot, man. You did a lot in Nashville. You did a lot since you've been home. You cleaned up. You went to the gym. But one thing you didn't do is you didn't watch the 3-hour extravaganza known as Hell in the Cell. And maybe someday you'll rewind that back on the network and you'll watch it. But you missed one of the better shows that I've seen in a long time. And when I texted you before the show to give me a prediction on what you thought the show would be on a scale of 1 to 10, I think you gave me something like a 4.5. And I did.
4.5 was my prediction.
And I was absolutely stunned by that because, for one, we knew that there were matchups on the card that were going to be pretty fantastic wrestling-wise to watch, but normally you're the man giving Monday Night Raws B-minuses and Bs, and when they aren't the greatest Raws in the world, but you're giving them a pretty good grade, and then you come out and you give Hell in a Cell a 4.5 before it starts. Now, I don't know if you're being sarcastic when you did that or if that's actually what you thought the show was going to be.
I've had a few toppers that day, so maybe I was underestimating it a little bit. I didn't expect a great show just because no WWE, the Orton Cena match to be underwhelming just because we've seen it so many times. And like you had mentioned in the past couple of weeks, even though we love Rollins and Ambrose, before last night, I don't think anyone knew what we could expect out of them on that stage. What it sounds like, they did a fantastic job, and the show was better than I anticipated. But if that's the truth on every episode of Raw and every pay-per-view, I'll be a happy camper. So I'm okay with being a little wrong with my pre-Hell in the Cell prediction.
Yeah, and not only were you wrong on your Hell in a Cell predictions, finally I beat you in the Hell in a Cell prediction matchups. So I get my bottle of Southern Comfort back.
It was a bad week for Dirt.
I finally get my bottle of Southern Comfort back. I'm going to make a bunch of old fashions, Wisconsin style. I'm going to enjoy them. But one thing you mentioned was Rollins and Ambrose from Hell in a Cell. And now, before the show, you and I talked that we thought that would be the best match on the card, or at least the better of the two Hell in a Cell matches. Now, in my standpoint, as far as high spots go, it took the cake. It had some high spots in it. It started out hot. Obviously, the finish is what it is with the Bray Wyatt inclusion in the finish. There were a lot of people upset with that. They didn't get a clean finish. But the Orton-Cena Hell in a Cell match was a much better wrestling match than Rollins-Ambrose in my eyes as far as in-ring psychology goes. I enjoyed them both. And obviously, I'm going to enjoy pretty much anything that Randy Orton's in, if you guys haven't known that already. But what shocked me the most about Hell in a Cell, and I told you this last night, was the fact that Orton and Cena were the fourth match on the card, and they were 4 matches before the main event. And by the main event, I guess I should call it a headline, but how can WWE call it a double main event when there's 3 matches in between, the Cena-Orton match, and then there's, 1, 2, 3, and then we finally get Ambrose-Rollins to finalize the pay-per-view. And I get trying to spread out the gimmick matches. You can't really call them a double main event then in my eyes.
It did kind of appear from reading about it and hearing from you. It almost kind of sounded like they did it as a kind of a Monday Night Raw kind of strategy, as having like the 8 o'clock main event, the 9 o'clock main event, and as opposed to doing what they would normally do on a pay-per-view. So I don't know if that's a new strategy that they want to try, or if that was just a one-night thing.
Yeah, I'm not so sure either. I guess that was the thing I was shocked about. I really wasn't that. First off, I still think that Orton Cena should have closed the show. I get that they have Ambrose and Rollins. Given the angle at the end with Bray Wyatt coming out and ruining the match for a lot of people and interfering and causing Dean Ambrose the chance to beat Seth Rollins. And there's a lot we could talk about in Hell in a Cell, and I wrote an article on our website, pencilpodcast.com, that you can check out where I give you a little bit more in-depth. But because of time constraints, we're not going to get too in-depth with Hell in a Cell. I did want to touch on the Dolph Ziggler and Antonio Cesaro match, because it was the best match on the card, wrestling-wise, and just everything involved in it. It was the best match on the whole card. Normally, when you have a 2 out of 3 falls match, you'd expect it to go 3 falls. We're trained as professional wrestling fans to believe that every 2 out of 3 falls matches go to 3 falls. The first fall happened pretty quick when Dolph got a quick roll up for the 3 count. So my assumption at this point, and I wrote about this online, was that I thought Cesaro was going to get a quick pin after that, and then they were going to draw out the 3rd pin. That didn't happen. Dolph went over clean for 2 finishes right in a row, back to back. What are your thoughts on that as far as the booking-wise go? I mean, it's shocking to me. I guess I shouldn't say it's shocking. It was a letdown to me because I wanted to see this match go longer because it was so good. Now, you with not seeing the match, but by reading the results, seeing that Ziggler went over clean for 2 falls, and he should go over clean. Obviously, he's the babyface, but Cesaro not getting any sort of pin. What does that make you think about those 2 gentlemen moving forward?
I was surprised. That was probably the biggest surprise that I read and that I'd heard about while I was down on vacation, was Cesaro didn't get any falls, and I had Cesaro picked to win the match clean anyway, figuring that Ziggler was losing the belt at that point and he was going to start going in another direction. Now, after watching the last 24 hours of thinking that, hey, maybe Ziggler is going in a different direction anyway, but he's going to continue to have the belt going into Survivor Series with everything happened on Raw last night. So maybe it makes a little sense, but I was very surprised. I don't know where they're going to go with Cesaro right now. Your guess is as good as mine. I would hope that he doesn't get shoved under any more rugs as he has the last few months, but I'm afraid that that's kind of the way it's looking at this point, especially after what he did on Raw last night.
Yeah, he's a workhorse. I mean, Cesaro was a workhorse for the company, and last night on Monday Night Raw, he was basically a guinea pig for Dean Ambrose to just beat the shit out of him with a microphone for 3.5 minutes. So it was definitely a waste of time, especially after the showing at Hell in a Cell that Cesaro went through. I don't know what they're doing with Cesaro either, but I don't like it. And I'm going to get on the WWE like I got on about Orton not having a spot in the card. Cesaro deserves a spot in the card, and I'm not the only one who thinks that. They need to do something with him. And if it is inserting him into the U.S. title picture with Sheamus again, I would see that match again, and I'm totally cool with that, because I actually thought Bray Wyatt was going to be inserted in the U.S. title picture, and I was completely wrong on that.
Do you think what I wanted to ask you about Cesaro was, do you think he's somebody that will be reintroduced to the Authority situation? It doesn't look like they're going to be worried about turning him face like I thought I figured that was the way he was going whenever he left the Authority. But now if they're having this gimmick match at Survivor Series, which sounds like it should be a good situation and a good match with hopefully get a lot of guys involved, do you see that as where he would most likely go now?
I mean, there's no other place for him to go at Survivor Series looking forward unless he's part of the Authority. But you and I sat last night trying to think about the teams now. We know it's Dolph Ziggler and John Cena, and Dolph Ziggler went over clean for 2 falls at Hell in a Cell, like you mentioned, makes him look very strong to join Team Cena for Survivor Series. The Authority has Seth Rollins, and it has Corporate Kane. One can assume that Randy Orton is going to be on either of the teams, and we're not sure which way he's going to go, given the direction of the RKO situation last night. I would be a fan of putting Cesaro on the Authority. I just don't see it. I really think that he's left off this pay-per-view, and it's going to be a shame, unless they do something drastic changing. But they've done crazier things, obviously, and they've made us believe one thing and totally redeemed themselves by doing something completely different, because Cesaro was hot, I guess, leading into WrestleMania last year with We the People breaking up with Zeb Coulter and Jack Swagger, and then he won the Andre the Giant Battle Royal. You know, they could definitely do something like that again and get some steam behind them. I don't understand what they're doing, but then again, you know, we looked at Damian Sandow a year ago at exactly this time, and said, what are they doing with Damian Sandow? It took a year, but Damian Sandow is the most over guy on the roster right now, and it's, you know, I would imagine they have a plan for Cesaro. If not, they're really fucking stupid, because he's probably the best worker they have as far as technician goes on the roster. They need to do something with them, and I really don't have an answer for you. I don't know where they go with him at this point. He's already had Sheamus. He's had Dolph, lost to Dolph. Yeah, he could join the Authority, and then that could stem off to him and Dolph having another match down the road. I guess is the only thing I could potentially see. But I just don't really think that's going to happen. Is that what your assumption is for Cesaro, that you think he's going to be on Team Authority?
Yeah, I anticipate that'll probably be where he ends up. I'm not sure how. If it's going to be he comes back to them with his tail between his legs after the embarrassment of the last 2 or 3 weeks, but I don't know that I think that's the best for him or the best for the product. But yeah, that would be my best guess right now.
Well, we said here, early on in the stage, we found out last night that the main event at Survivor Series is going to be this classic Survivor Series match, which is a typical 5-on-5 match. Pretty much guarantees that there's going to be no Brock Lesnar, so that means Lesnar will not be back until Royal Rumble, which we kind of expected that in the first place. So we have Dolph Ziggler, John Cena. Who else do you have on Team Cena at this point? Or who do you envision being filling out Team Cena's roster? They got 3 more spots.
I'll say most likely Team Cena will be Cena, Ziggler, Jimmy and Jay Uso, and the Big Show probably. Okay. And then that would be my 5 if I had to guess right now.
Oh, and what I think the Big Show and Mark Henry are going to have their own separate singles match. I don't think they're going to be involved in the Survivor Series matchup at all. I do still think that Randy Orton's going to join Team Cena at the end. I think the Authority's going to do enough to people that Cena are talking to on Raw to make people not want to join Team Cena. And I told you this last night, and this is how I would book it. I would have Cena's team come out with 4 competitors at Survivor Series against 5, and then have I Hear Voices hit. Randy Orton comes down and joins Team Cena. Ultimately having them basically help him go over on the Authority, leading to a Cena-Orton matchup at TLC would be how I'd book it. But I would say, John Cena, Dolph Ziggler. I don't really see the Usos being on there, but I mean, what else do you do with them? I guess. And yeah, I guess if the Usos are going to be there, then I think that 5th member is going to be Randy Orton. I'm just trying to think of the roster in general and full, and I can't see anybody else that potentially would be on that as far as Team Cena goes. So it'll be interesting, though. I mean, we obviously have 3 more weeks for that to happen.
Yeah, depending on what they're going to do with Sheamus, I guess he would be another candidate.
Yeah, and you're right. I don't. As far as Sheamus goes, that is a good point, because now you're going to have the Intercontinental and U.S. champion, and then Dolph Ziggler, Sheamus, and John Cena, 3 of the bigger names in the company on the team, and that's a strong team. It's just, I don't think you can have a Survivor Series without the IC title or the U.S. title defended. But what they could do, and I was thinking about this today, is if you're the Authority, you have the option of making any match that you want. And if the main event of Survivor Series is your traditional 5-on-5 Survivor Series match, why not take every member of Team Cena and make them compete earlier in the night at Survivor Series? So make Dolph Ziggler defend the Intercontinental title at Survivor Series. Make Sheamus, if he's on that team, defend the U.S. title before the Survivor Series match. Because now that adds intrigue to the main event that these guys already worked once. They're worn down, kind of basically, making it easy on the Authority. And the more and more I thought about that today, the more and more I liked it. And the more and more I thought it was a good idea. It brings heel heat to the Authority. And then basically, Team Cena overcomes all the obstacles and beats the Authority at Survivor Series.
Yeah, I would like that. One thing I thought about today on my 380-mile hike was that in a situation where they do have like the belts of everybody who has a championship in the actual Survivor Series match, could they make the match anybody on Cena's team that has a belt is defending the belt in that match? So if any of them were to get pinned, they would lose the belt as well.
That'd be interesting. I never thought of that.
In the middle of the match, I don't know if that's just too much going on in one match, but that would be at least something that would make it a little bit different. But I don't know if it's the best to throw it all in there. That might, but it could be interesting.
That would be very interesting. I mean, obviously, I'm trying to think on if we do book it that way, who in the Authority would carry a title? Though I mean, Corporate Kane's not going to be the IC title.
That's what I was going to ask you. Who are you having on Team Authority other than Kane and Rollins? Do you think? First question: is there any chance in your mind that Triple H competes?
No, Triple H will not compete. Triple H, he's not going to bring himself to compete at. I mean, obviously, Survivor Series is one of their bigger pay-per-views. He's not going to do it. He will not compete. He will not be on Team Authority. I have Seth Rollins. Obviously, I have Kane. I'm really starting to think that they're going to have Jamie Noble and Joey Mercury be part of Team Authority because they're very corporate like that. So that would be 4 and 5 or 3 and 4. And then that fifth spot, I mean, potentially could be open to a Randy Orton still if he doesn't do the Team Cena thing. He'd be on the Authority and turn on Seth Rollins and walk out. So Orton's going to be on one of the two teams. He has to be. We just don't know. Otherwise, where does he go? And obviously, we know they're teasing Orton, Seth Rollins for the future. Either team would make sense. So, I mean, I guess if I'm really booking it, I think I have Orton still on Team Authority, and that's where it really comes to blows with Seth Rollins to kind of basically have Orton break away from the Authority, say, fuck you, I'm going to be on my own. I'm not a face. I'm not a heel. I'm just a guy who does what he wants, and people can appreciate it or not appreciate it moving forward.
I think that is the absolute best Randy Orton we can have. I'll toss in Stardust and Goldust. I'll say that they might be somebody that they'll add to the Authority's team, and then Cesaro most likely. So if they have, I don't think they'll have Mercury and Noble. I think it's more likely to be Stardust and Goldust.
Perfect. Well, let's move on to Rusev. Obviously, beating the Big Show clean makes Rusev look extremely unbeatable. Beat the world's largest athlete, beat the world's strongest man, yada, yada, I guess, at this point. I mean, I was surprised it was a clean finish, to be honest with you. I thought Mark Henry would have got involved at Hell in a Cell, but he did his thing on Monday Night Raw. I think moving forward, and I was thinking this yesterday a little bit, last night, and then today again, I think the next person to challenge Rusev moving forward is the man that we saw return last night, and that's Ryback.
Oh, so do I. Ryback rules, the big guy. Oh.
The big guy is back. I think they have Ryback go against Rusev, and Rusev go over again. Now, he's beating everybody in sight to lead to John Cena just completely beating his ass at TLC. And I honestly think that John Cena is going to be the one to break that streak. I don't think they're sending Kurt Angle. We would have heard something by now. You would think on it. John Cena is the only person in the company at this point that would make any sort of sense to go over on Rusev unless he faces Brock Lesnar, which he will not and probably will never face Brock Lesnar in his career. Unless they keep him undefeated until WrestleMania and The Rock wrestles him, which would be stupid. So, I mean, I think Ryback and I guess the Russian big guy, Rusev, will be the matchup at Survivor Series. That's a matchup that I actually want to see. I loved Ryback's return last night. I loved how they went back to the roots of Ryback, and you actually touched on it. Like, they went back to what worked with Ryback, and it's the whole feed me more, the meat hook, just old school Ryback that was main eventing Hell in a Cell last year. But this Ryback's a little bit more likable because I think we understand who he is now. He's not rushed to the main event picture. He probably will never be in the main event picture again. So I'm a fan of Ryback's return last night. I thought it was cool. Beating the shit out of Bo Dallas was great. Would you book him with Rusev, or would you book him with somebody else, or would you leave him off the card completely?
The big guy, I don't think the big guy will be on the card at Survivor Series as much as I would love for him to be. And if we could get him some mic time, the guy's hilarious. So I'm all board for wherever they put him. I think what might make the most sense is whenever The Miz with his gimmick gets all done with Sheamus or done with whatever he's doing, trying to protect his moneymaker against whoever he is right now, with the way that Ryback wrestles and with the meat hook clothesline and stuff like that, maybe that would make sense. Trying to give Ryback a legitimate heel to go against, to be able to help him, trying to get him some actual people behind him like he used to have before they, for no reason, or I guess they turned him bad or had him be good against CM Punk, whatever the deal was a year ago whenever Cena got hurt, which was basically the end of Ryback. hopefully that doesn't happen again, and we can get him some legitimate help from the fans. Putting him against a heel like The Miz might be just what the doctor ordered. That'd be my guess.
Yeah, I mean, if he does something with The Miz, then The Miz and Damien Sandow situation has to be over, and I don't think that's nearly close to being over. They're actually doing a Miz Dow TV segment, I think, tonight here on Main Event that I'm not watching right now, but that I believe Miz and Mizdow or Miz and Sandow are going to lead into an actual matchup between those two. We've been saying it for weeks. It's pretty apparent at this point now it's going to happen. I think the Miz feels like he's getting embarrassed, and he feels like that Damien Sandow's taking a spotlight. I sound like a broken record here because we've talked about this for so much, but I fully expect the Miz and Damien Sandow matchup to happen either at Survivor Series or TLC. Sooner the better, I think. Although, I mean, I do enjoy Damien Sandow mimicking everything that the Miz does, and it's funny and it's enjoyable for me. I just think that it's time for Damien Sandow to finally get a push as a singles competitor moving forward. Didn't see a lot of Bray Wyatt last night. I was actually shocked that we didn't get more of that, especially after what happened at the Hell in a Cell pay-per-view. I mean, he did the cryptic promo, which was cool, but we didn't get much of him and not a whole lot more of Dean Ambrose after that whole situation.
I was shocked. I was going to ask you about that during the show last night, and we just never had to bring up. But what in the world? Like, if you're going to put Ambrose and Rollins on last, at Hell in a Cell, you're going to have the match end the way that it did. Me being someone who didn't watch Hell in a Cell, I would have had no idea that was such a big deal at the end of Hell in a Cell by just watching Raw last night. I feel like we talked about this the Raw after the most previous pay-per-view. It felt like they dropped the ball on that situation on Raw last night. Maybe they'll pick it up and make up for it in the next week or two, and I hope they do, like they did a few weeks ago. But it feels like they just didn't follow up on something that looks like such a huge storyline.
Right, and they made a big deal of it in the opening package, the opening video for Monday Night Raw, about how big this was, that we had the return of the Eater of Worlds, or whatever the hell that means. Bray Wyatt coming back and costing them the match, and yeah, really not a ton of stuff. I mean, Bray says he's going to pretty much end Dean Ambrose moving forward. They do need to do more of that, and what you're referring to last month on Raw, we didn't have, or was it last month on Raw, we didn't have Lesnar or Paul Heyman come out after Seth Rollins did the curb stomp on Brock Lesnar, and they still really haven't. I mean, they addressed it a little bit on that Monday Night Raw, but that's still something to kind of keep your eye out for too. And one thing we didn't mention is potentially a Roman Reigns return for Team Cena, and we talked about this last night, and he was on last night too. One of those terrible scripted promos that it's sickening to watch.
I think he is so dead in the water. He was so hot, but I can't, even if his music hits at this point, I don't think it's going to be the same as it was a month and a half ago. I hate to say it, but these promos are just god-awful.
But I think we can say, you know why he was so hot a month ago? Who was he working with? The best in the world. He was working with Randy Orton.
He was working with the man, the myth, Randy Orton. You're right. He was
working with Randy Orton, and last night Orton brought his A game in that opening promo. I was intrigued from the moment his music hit, from the way he ran, basically pretty much. He didn't sprint, but he was walking with a mission to the ring. Cut a very, very angry promo that was fantastic. Even brought up things from his real life. Hit the RKO out of nowhere, and basically just slurred out of the ring like a snake and had the rest of the night off. But it was fantastic. It was a great way to open the show, and it really gave some intrigue about, this is something that I think it's fresh for Orton, and it's giving him something new to work with. Like you mentioned, it gives Orton that chance to get back to not being a face, not being a full-fledged heel, but being that guy who, like a Stone Cold, I'm going to do whatever I want. If the crowd cheers me, great, but I'm not going to kiss your ass to make you like me type of a character, and that's the best that Randy Orton can be. And if he can couple that with his in-ring ability, because his match with Cena was great at Hell in a Cell, and him and Rollins could tear the roof off. Like, it could be fantastic. Because that match last night with Rollins and Cena, fantastic. Fantastic match on Raw, and we got that shit for free. So that was a pay-per-view match on Raw. I was shocked that they gave it to us, but I mean, I'll take that every week. I would appreciate more clean finishes, but I think at this point that's just crying over spilled milk, because it's not going to happen. It hardly happens on pay-per-views anymore when you get a clean finish. So I think we're to the point where if we have 11 or 12 pay-per-views a year, if we get 5 clean finishes or 4 clean finishes in the main event, that's just the way it's going to be. So you got to accept that. And if they're going to have a dirty finish,
the way that it was last night, at least it was entertaining. And you're right. The man, the best in the world, Randy Orton, he was not at the end of the show, which I think is just fine because he is not like everyone else. And how many months ago was it? One of the best segments after he beat Cena last year for the undisputed title, when he stood in the middle of the ring and talked to the whole roster and said, where you stand is appropriate and where I stand is appropriate, because that's who Randy Orton legitimately believes he is. He thinks he's above everyone else. He doesn't need to deal with everyone else, and he can just RKO anybody he wants, anytime he wants. And that's awesome because he is that good. So I'm okay with him being like that. So I don't need him involved in the end of last night, but I do need him to get his hands on Seth Rollins or somebody in the next 2 to 3 weeks in the main event, hopefully.
Yeah, I have a feeling that there's going to be a lot more attention paid to Randy Orton moving forward, and rightfully so. Best in the world, great worker, great on the mic, and just fantastic entertainer. He's the personification of what the WWE looks for in a superstar, and if we could have more like him, it'd be a lot better. But at this point, like last night's Raw to me was entertaining. I can't think of like one segment that was not good. Even the Divas match with Nikki Bella and the Funkadactyl wasn't awful. We weren't finding ourselves fast forwarding through any of the segments. I mean, the tag match was okay, so that's good if they can keep coupling that stuff together. I just want to point out though that as much as we talk about that last match last night and how great it was, we're ultimately going to say right away that Seth Rollins is the man in that match. He did some really cool stuff. He's very athletic. He can do flip-over moves that we don't see out of other workers on that roster. In the last 6 to 8 months, if you think about some of the best matches on Monday Night Raw, there is one constant in those matches, and that constant is John Cena. John Cena, Antonio Cesaro, fantastic. John Cena, I think Cena had a match with Ambrose. Or maybe I'm wrong on that, but I know Cena had two or three other.
He had a match with Ambrose.
Yeah, I mean, not the pole match one, but earlier in that one, he was still part of the Shield. But I know in the last 6 to 8 months, there's been some really fantastic matches on Raw. Some of the best matches that we've ever seen on Raw, and John Cena was 50% of that match. He was involved in it. He's good. I don't give a shit what you people say in the internet. If you want to make fun of John Cena for having 5 moves, the motherfucker knows how to work a wrestling match. And when you're in there with Seth Rollins, who also can work, and you have 2 professionals like you had last night, and we're able to get that match for free, that's a match anybody should have went out, like you said, Travis, and paid $9.99 and got the network for it and watched it at a pay-per-view. Because it was that good. The finish is, okay, the finish is one thing. You're right. I would have liked to see that match end clean, but you and I both know, when that match started, that it wasn't going to end clean. We knew that.
And we have 3 Raws and 4 SmackDowns before the next pay-per-view, and of those 7 shows, I'm sure the main event will only be a clean finish once or twice, and that's just the world that we're living in the WWE. So us talking about it isn't going to change it. We need to live with that, but we'll see. Hopefully, at some point, we get closer to 50% clean finishes. But yeah, we halfway through the match, before the match started, we knew it wasn't going to be a clean finish. Yeah,
we were seeing a lot of dirty finishes, and I told you this last time. I'm kind of getting over them too. I wish I'd see some more clean finishes, but I think moving forward, when we start having a decent picture on what's going to happen, we'll probably have a couple more clean finishes. At
least Heath Slater got to be involved in the main event. That was big.
Heath Slater took the attitude adjustment on his hip. It was fantastic. Even Zack Ryder got a little show on out there. So good for those guys. I mean, they're probably not going to get much more money for it, but hey, at least we saw him on TV. Then Adam Rose too. Congratulations, boys. You got your ass kicked at the end of the show. We did have one person point out to us about the Divas title and how stagnant it is at this point, and I said that the match between the Bellas at the pay-per-view was better than the actual Divas title match itself. Why not bring up Charlotte from NXT? It's Ric Flair's daughter. She's great. She's attractive. She's tall. She can work. They have a couple girls on NXT that can work. Bring it up and freshen up the division, or start using some of the Total Diva girls more in a wrestling role like they're using with Alicia Fox. I don't want to waste too much time on that subject. That was the only weakness of the Hell in a Cell card, in my opinion, was the Divas title match. So that's why I touched on it. I really think that they need to do something more. And I don't think AJ Lee has done anything since her return. And maybe you mentioned this to me, Travis, to really connect with the fans. And there's nothing there. Prior to her leaving the WWE for that little bit, before WrestleMania, she was cutting promos, and they were good promos, and people were interested in her character.
Yep. The only thing she's done in months that was of any interest was whenever she was in the ring with Stephanie McMahon during the Bella situation, and her and Stephanie McMahon had that little face-off. That was great, but other than that, she hasn't done anything memorable in 3 or 4 months, I don't think.
Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. They need to do something to who's ever running the Divas division. It's very hit or miss with that division. So hopefully they can do something great. I was happy with Raw, happy with Hell in a Cell, happy the big guy is back. And I get, that's good. And we got 3 more weeks till the next pay-per-view. I was excited for Hell in a Cell. It paid off for me, and hopefully you get a chance to, during your downtime once you get caught up with all your shows and stuff, and can check it out. But coming up next, we have our guest here. It's going to be a man I know very well, a man who was an integral part of my professional wrestling career early on. The man who trained me, and by train me, we'll get into that a little bit more with Red when he gets on the line with us. It's Red Lightning. He no longer is involved in professional wrestling, but he trained himself under Ken Patera. Was a mainstay in professional wrestling, booked all over the Midwest, worked for OVW for a little bit, and I believe worked for the WWE a little bit too, but really taught me how to behave, I guess, in professional wrestling, because I was a 16-year-old kid who thought everything was going to come to me pretty easily, and it didn't. So he helped set me straight in professional wrestling. We're going to talk about that we'll basically talk about his training, his old school training regimen with Ken Patera, some of the ribs the guys did, and then we're going to talk some funny ass stories about what I know about what he did back in the day, including the time that he broke a dude's nose on purpose. So we'll be right back with Red here in a little bit. Hang with us. Right after this, we'll be right back.
Hey, this is Chris with Spot Monkey Media. Are you a professional wrestler, a promoter, a business owner? Spot Monkey Media offers creative media solutions for your brand or business. Whether it's merchandise design or promotional material for your next event, Spot Monkey Media will work hands-on to bring your ideas to life. Spot Monkey Media. Create your legacy. Get a free high five when you mention this podcast. Connect with us on Twitter at Spot Monkey Media.
You're listening to The Pencil, the professional wrestling podcast featuring me, the one and only Renny D, every Tuesday on iTunes, PodBean, Stitcher, and YouTube. Find us online at pencilpodcast.com or follow us on Twitter at pencilpodcast. You've been listening to another great episode of The Pencil, a professional wrestling podcast coming straight at you every Tuesday on iTunes, PodBean, Stitcher, and YouTube. But hang around, we got a lot more to come, because up next is the guest of the evening. We dive right into the world of professional wrestling, asking all the questions that you want answers to. Up next. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are back here on The Pencil, and as promised, our guest of the evening is a man who shaped young Renny D into the professional wrestler you guys knew and loved later on in my career, and he helped me out a lot when it came to the world of professional wrestling because he is my trainer, he was my mentor, and he was one of my best friends in professional wrestling. Red Lightning joins The Pencil via telephone. Red, how the hell have you been, my friend?
Oh, I've been doing great, Renny. It's great to be here and great to chat with you again, and those are some good times.
Great times, and before we go any further, let's hear that laugh, man. It's been too damn long. Let's hear it.
All right, I can do it on command, so. And then stop on command.
Just like that. You're just like, I mean, it's like you have Tourette's when it comes to laughing, and it was fantastic. And then anybody who knows you, and anybody who's ever met Red Lightning or seen Red Lightning in person knows that the man has a laugh that's just, it was so popular, it became part of your gimmick as a professional wrestler, and not necessarily in the wrestling ring, but to the boys in the back. Like, we had to hear that laugh every time we saw you in person. I don't think I ever let you go one show without having to hear that laugh one time, and I'll tell you what, it's great when you don't see Red every day, but when you drive with him in a car for 4 or 5 hours at a time, the road trips, at that point you can do without it. But what's new in the life of Red Lightning, man? You haven't been wrestling in a while. You stepped away from the ring, obviously due to the bumps and bruises from the years and years of battering your body to the mat. What's new in the life of Red Lightning today?
Yeah, I haven't wrestled in about 18 months, and in that time, bought a new house, nice neighborhood, and everything. Just living the dream, I guess you could say.
Living the dream. That's exactly what I'm doing since I stepped out of the ring in March, and I sit behind this microphone. I get a chance to talk to my friends in the business, and I finally get a chance to get you on the show because we haven't spoken to each other here in a while, and we would chat over Facebook and different things along that nature, but this will give us a chance to spend 30 hours spewing our bullshit and catching up on the good old days of professional wrestling. And the good old days of professional wrestling. Now, I broke in 11 years ago. I was 16 years old. That puts me at 2003. What year did you break into the business, Red?
1998. I was 20 years old and wasn't really going in any certain direction. I was in college, playing basketball, and college just wasn't for me at that time, and decided, I got to try something else. And I was always a fan of wrestling, but I didn't think it was possible. Like I had no idea that there was. I had no idea there was like independent pro wrestling. And a friend of mine saw an ad in the paper for a wrestling camp. I called the number on a Friday night and went up the next day and started.
Isn't that funny? You mentioned that you didn't know what independent professional wrestling was, but you were in the professional wrestling. And that's not a whole lot different even today. I mean, from what I noticed, even I was talking to a guy who is now down at NXT. Mike Rallis went to the University of Minnesota. He's going through the program down at NXT, but he really didn't know much about independent wrestling in 2014. So in 1998, independent wrestling was at that point, I would think, more, I guess, hot at that point than it is now. And you didn't know what it was. And it's funny because we look at independent wrestling now today and we expect these big crowds to show up, and it just doesn't happen because people don't know that we're out there. People don't know that there are gymnasiums and armories and students, or outdoor festivals or wherever the show might be. They don't know it's possible to put a wrestling ring in there, put fans in there, and put on a 7-match card. And that's something that needs to change. When you broke into the business, now we have Facebook, we have Twitter, we have Instagram, we have all the social media aspects that quote-unquote promoters are trying to utilize to promote their shows. When you broke into the business in 98, how did people find out that there was a wrestling show in town?
Everything was done through newspaper ads, mostly posters as well, radio, and if the promoter had enough money for advertising, they would do TV as well. But yeah, exactly, it's totally changed in that respect.
All right, so you.
How long, Red? Thank you for coming on the show, by the way. But
thank you.
How long, when you started, how long did it take until you felt comfortable wrestling?
Oh wow. Let's see.
So you knew what you were doing, was working a match, or knew how to do enough moves to feel comfortable to do a solid 10, 12, 15-minute match.
I would say at least 3 years, maybe even 4, until I really felt comfortable enough to be able to put a match together myself. Because the first 3 or 4 years, there were still a lot of veterans around from like mid 80s, late 80s, early 90s, and so I never had. I just let them run the match, and I just listen and follow along.
Yeah, that's a thing too. Like when I broke in, and obviously I had your guidance, Red, but it definitely took me 2-3 years to understand basically what I was doing. Because when I broke in, I was just a young 16-year-old kid thinking, hey, I need to do a backflip, or I need to do a somersault here, I need to take a dive off the apron here and make it look really cool, because that's what I was accustomed to seeing on TV. I didn't understand that there was a thing called psychology in professional wrestling, and when I finally got that, obviously things changed for me. But with you broke in 98. You said it took you about 3 years, and there were a lot of veterans and old school 80s and 90s wrestlers still around when you were wrestling. Well, one of those old school guys was actually the man who trained you, Ken Patera. What was that like? Because I've heard stories through you, through Bull Geike, people who've I guess trained under Ken Patera. I guess that must have been. Were you familiar with who Ken was before you started training in this camp?
Yes, I was. I remember watching, because I started watching wrestling in the mid '80s. I was probably 7, 8, 9 years old, and Ken was big then, and I definitely remember him. I definitely knew who he was.
And now, when you got there, how bad did those guys kick your ass?
Yeah, his camp was tough. I mean, the cardio part of it, I was, far above the rest because I had just got done playing basketball in college. So I was in really good shape cardio-wise, but I was only about 160 pounds and wasn't really into lifting at that point. So the bumps were tough. But we would start out camp by running a mile. Then we would come in and we would do squats, push-ups, and sit-ups, and we worked our way up to 500 of each.
Jesus.
Then we would get in the ring and do our rolls, and then we would start doing drills, and it was repetitive over and over. And Ken was the trainer. He was there watching everything, but he didn't really get in the ring much. Billy Blaze was our in-ring trainer.
Yes, good old Billy. He actually told me to tell you hi, by the way. So, Billy Blaze, if you're listening to this, I told him, so, I'm off your shit list now.
Yeah, Billy was the in-ring guy. So, I mean, I worked with him a lot, and there were 5 of us in the first class, and then a couple months later, there was the second class started, and that had, 50 and Sheriff, Michael Bulgeike, Matt Burns, those guys were in the second class.
So did Ken ever have any of his buddies come in and guest train? Because obviously he had connections with, Ric Flair and everybody else that was big in the day, and they were, traveling partners. Did anybody like that ever pop in and try to teach the young kids? At that point would have been, I guess you were a young kid once upon a time, just like I was.
Yeah.
Did they have anybody that stopped in that gave you guys advice that wasn't just coming strictly from Ken or from Billy?
Yes, actually, second or third day of camp, Jim Brunzell popped in just to see what was going on, and Ken convinced him to get in the ring with us and work with us. So that was quite the experience too, because he was another one that I grew up watching as a kid. And then when I started working shows, 3 or 4 months into the training, I had my first match. And on his shows, he would have Nick Bockwinkel was like the commissioner. He'd bring in Mad Dog Vachon and Baron Von Raschke to sign autographs at the shows, and then and Brunzell would always work the shows. So I had a lot of guys to listen to and learn from, and it was really cool because they would take the time to talk to you after your match.
Now, did you have to go up to them and ask them for their advice? Because the big knock the young guys get nowadays, and I hear this all the time, was, there'd be a veteran nowadays on a wrestling card for the most part, is somebody who'd been to the Fed and came down, or like a Colt Cabana or somebody who's really big on the indie scene. But they say the biggest thing that they see of the young guys is that the young guys don't come and ask them for their advice or ask them to watch their match. They expect them to. When you were breaking into the business and you had all these resources on a wrestling card, did you have to go up to them and ask them for their advice, or were they open and willing to give it to you and come up to you and tell you exactly what they thought?
Yeah, that's the thing. I don't know where that you have to come up and ask me stuff came from, because when I started, I was, too intimidated to really go up and ask these guys, hey, can you watch my match? But after my second match, Nick Bockwinkel pulled me aside and talked to me for 20 minutes about psychology. And, I mean, it was tremendous advice, but at the time I was just, I couldn't take it all in right away, but over the years I remembered that conversation and remembered what he told me.
Yeah, and that might have even been sort of like a foreign language at that point too, because psychology is very difficult, and we've mentioned that numerous times on this podcast. It's the toughest part about professional wrestling. Anybody can get out there. I could take Travis out there and throw him down on the mat, teach him how to land properly. But teaching somebody how to structure a match and doing things and placing things in a certain place because it makes sense for this is, even today, when I sit and watch the product on TV, I critique it from that standpoint. Now, it's annoying because I want to watch it as a fan, but I always have that professional wrestling background where I watch something and say, well, that didn't make any sense. What the hell are they doing? And I wish I would have, and that's my biggest thing, is I wish I would have known that when I walked through the door, because I don't think I'd be doing this podcast right now. I think it'd be other places. But it is one of those things. And Travis asked you earlier, you said it took you like 3 years to basically feel comfortable structuring a match. And you just mentioned too, you said, so you were training for about 3 months before you had your first match then?
Yeah. I started in January, and my first match was April 4th.
Do you remember who your first opponent was?
Yes, it was his gimmick was the farmer, and he was in the first class of Ken's with me, and he was a good guy, good worker, and but he passed away. I think he was only wrestling about 4 years and he passed away. So
Jesus.
Yeah, he was really young. And but yeah, Farmer and I worked together quite a bit. I'd say about half a dozen times the first 6 months for Ken.
Okay,
how far did you have to travel? How far did you have to travel back then? Whenever you started, did you go around to different cities, or where were most of your matches located?
Mostly in the cities. The first match was in St. Paul, and then the next day we were up in Superior, Wisconsin. But usually they were around the cities at that point. Ken branched out quite a bit later, but at first it was mostly around the cities.
So,
and when would you have met Renny D? How many years into your career?
Let's see, 2003. Yeah, I guess about 5.5 years in.
Yeah.
When I met Renny.
What was 16-year-old Renny D like? That's before I even met him, Red. That's before I even knew who he was.
Well, Renny was awesome. He was hilarious. I loved him in the locker room because he definitely kept everybody on their toes. You and your partner Eclipse.
Yes. We didn't know any better. You know, we were back there walking around. I will never forget the time. Now, Tejas, you know who Tejas is, and Travis, I'll paint a picture for you and our listeners. Tejas is a bigger worker, like size-wise, would have ripped me in fucking two, would have ripped me in shreds, and he is of Native American descent. So I went up to him one time, and I think, Red, you were in the locker room, and we were talking about something, and I don't know how we got on the subject of a totem pole, but then I went to him. I said, "I love your brown ass," and I don't know to this day why I said that, but I think that you were in the locker room, right? Because I thought Tejas was going to kill me, and I think that you actually talked to him, and you know, I tried to apologize because it came out, it slipped out. I really didn't mean to say that, and that was the thing that came out. And I'm the furthest thing from a racist, so you know, things like
I think I do remember that because he was pretty hot about it.
yeah, he wasn't. I mean, I don't blame him. I don't blame him for you know, not being happy with a 16-year-old kid who's got a couple matches under his belt coming in and saying something like that to a man who's been doing it forever. And now I can talk to him, and he actually, you know, he runs some shows in Wisconsin and wanted to book me for him, and you know, we get along great. But that's just, you know, that's what young Renny D was like. He didn't know better on anything when it came to that. I was mouthy, you know, at some times, and I thought I knew a lot more than I did, and that's one thing I give.
So you haven't changed.
I haven't changed a lot. No, I'm still the same guy I was, you know, 11 years ago, and that's one thing that you did for me, Red. I mean, I keep saying this to people, and people ask who trained me. I say Red Lightning trained me. You didn't necessarily have to teach me how to take a suplex or do things like that. Those things I knew, but you had to teach me locker room etiquette and, you know, how to ask and talk to a promoter about getting more money and things like that, because those are things that you don't learn in the wrestling ring. You know, you don't understand how to walk up to a promoter and say, "Hey man, you know, my envelope here's a little light, brother. Can you give me a little bit more?" And those are things that you were able to help me out with. What's one of the best stories that you have working with a promoter, you know, where maybe you didn't get paid enough and you had to bring up and it turned into an altercation or anything along those lines? Can you think of like one story that sticks out more so than another?
Oh, wow. Let me think.
I mean, because there's probably, first off, people, in this business, by one story, I mean, there are a pocket full of stories of shady-ass promoters. It's professional wrestling. So I know Red has at least one. He's probably got a dozen of them. I just literally asked him to pick out one of his favorite ones. So that might even be difficult, you know, in itself.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. There's so many. I'm just trying to think of one of the more recent ones was, I'm not going to say who or where, but I'll just say it was in Minnesota. and the guy told me X amount of dollars, and there was, you know, a substantial amount missing. So I had to try and track him down after the show, and I was like, yeah, so where's the rest of this? And of course he tried to deny that, you know, there was an agreement for that amount, and I was like, look, this is what we agreed to, and I traveled quite a way for this, and I'm like, if you don't give me, you know, what we agreed to, I'm not coming back, you know.
Right.
And And so he's like, okay. And then, like, he reached in his pocket and gave me the rest of it. And I was like, hey, everything's cool now, you know. It's just a thing where sometimes they try to get away with it, and you just got to call them out on it.
And that's the thing. Like, now, if that would have happened to me when I was breaking into the wrestling business at 16, 17 years old, you know, I call promoter, you know, ABC or whoever it might be and says, I need this for money. And they say, all right, cool. And I get half that, and I go up to him, you know, I might not even approach the guy because I didn't know how. And if I did approach him and he gave me that answer, I might have just taken that and be like, oh, okay. You know, but now in my life, if, you know, when I was wrestling, it's, you told me you're paying me this. You're going to pay me this money or there's going to be issues because obviously you drove this way. You get out there, you're the one doing the bumps and doing all these things. Something could go wrong. You know, you obviously need to be taken care of. Now, I kind of alluded to this earlier in the show before you were on the line. When I was going through training, the first match that I attended, now I seen Red wrestle when I was even younger than this in my hometown at a fairgrounds, and this was a show ran by Buck Zumoff, who is now in jail, which is a story for another day. But Red Lightning was on this show, so that's when I first kind of saw you. I never got a chance to actually talk to you. And then the first time I really watched one of your matches and basically was focused on what you were doing, and we had met, you broke a dude's nose, man. You did a missile drop kick from the top rope and shattered some dude's nose. And 16-year-old Renny at this point's thinking, holy shit, what is going on in professional wrestling that this just happened? I mean, you remember that probably as clear as yesterday.
Yeah. Well, that was a big misunderstanding all the way around. But I learned something that day. Well, the first thing was I never aimed for the head on a missile drop kick, of course, because it's very hard to control.
Right.
So he was the manager, I think, of my opponent that night.
He was a dipshit, people. I'm telling you right now, if he's listening, I don't care. He was a fucking dipshit. So he definitely deserved the broken nose, regardless of what the backstory is. But go on, please.
If he is listening, please follow us at Pencil Podcast.
Yeah, I mean, if you're listening, Rage or whatever your name was, please follow us and check this out. We'd love it. We would love to have you follow us. But Red, please continue.
Okay. So, well, it was a long story, but basically I was told by the boy. I was basically worked by some of the boys, and so I guess I learned to not just trust at face value what they tell you, because like you said, that guy was not liked by everyone, and I think they were hoping I would, you know, get me mad and get me to do something. And but like I say, I wasn't purposely aiming for his face, but there was one or two others in the ring at the time that were holding him because that was the gimmick. And so when I jumped and took off, I was aiming for his chest, but he was pushed forward. He was pushed into me as I jumped, so there was in midair I couldn't really change my trajectory. So yeah, it happened. I apologized to him, and everything is fine, but
he's sorry, I'm not. So let's we'll move on. And that's the same show that Nathan, who broke into us, pissed his pants. So that was a good day for everybody at that time. Give us something as far as some old school ribs. Now, when I broke in, we did a little bit of ribs here and there, but nothing compared to, I think, kind of what some of you guys did. What's something? Can you recall a rib that you pulled on somebody that's pretty hysterical, or something that obviously this to you, basically the guys who were working you, or pretty much a rib on you that this happened. But is there something that you ever did to somebody that was pretty funny that you're pretty proud about?
Oh wow, I can't recall right offhand, but I did have a really, like, one of the funniest things that ever happened on a road trip was with you and Eclipse and Nathan Sensation. And we were, I don't know, I think I took you guys with to a Steel Domain show.
Yeah, we were the first Steel Domain show I ever went to, and Bobby Heenan was there, so I remember it like it was yesterday.
Yes. And I believe it was this one. I think there were several, but anyway, at one we stopped at a fast food restaurant on the way home.
It was a fucking Wendy's. I remember exactly what it was.
And Eclipse fills up his soda, takes one step and does a face bump. and the soda goes flying all over the place. and Nathan's like, you know, what the hell's going on? And Rennie's standing there with this really serious look on his face, and you start yelling, "Hey, somebody get a wet floor sign out here! Somebody clean up this mess!" And so somebody comes running up from the back with a mop. They mop it up. They give him a new cup. He goes over, fills it up again, takes 2 steps, and face plants again.
Yeah.
And then we go outside. We take a step off the curb right in front of the drive-thru.
Oh, Jesus.
Nathan face plants. His food and his drink go flying all over the place, and there's a cop in the drive-thru. And I look over, and the cop is laughing. And yeah, that was just hilarious, especially being there at the time and seeing the reactions of everybody.
Yeah, we used to do a lot of stupid shit. I mean, it was you're in a car with somebody for 3-4 hours, and you get out, and Caleb, the Eclipse, was notorious for doing the dumbest shit between us, because the 4 of us would travel everywhere together. And yeah, I do remember that story. I mean, we literally, there were numerous times where we damn near had the cops call on us for stupid shit, and fast food restaurants at that point. So I mean, that was good. That's a good memory, man. I actually had forgotten about that until you brought that up. So that was fantastic. Now, I'm trying to think here. In your career, and we're going to tell more stories too, but in your career, who's the one person that you worked that taught you the most?
Oh, boy, it'd be hard to pin that down to one, but one of the first ones that comes to mind was Travis Lee.
Okay.
He had different gimmicks. Pretty Boy Travis Lee, Tasty Travis Lee. He was in Flex Appeal as Tony DiNucci's partner. But yeah, Travis Lee, he started a little bit before me, but he had a really good grasp of psychology early on. And we would go on these long road trips. We used to work down in Indiana, and we would just talk psychology pretty much the whole way down. And yeah, that was about 2-3 years in, and that's where I really learned a lot of that, was on those road trips with Travis.
Did you ever work anybody then? And I'm sure you have, but like former Fed guys or anything like that early on in your career or later on in your career that, that they may have given you some advice or that you had a pretty good match with?
Yeah, actually, I did a tag match with Hacksaw Jim Duggan, and he kind of taught me a little bit of psychology of, as a face tag team, how to work that better. Worked with Marty Jannetty later on, and that was good too. Let's see, I worked with Bill Irwin, Wild Bill Irwin. That was he worked a really good match with me. This was probably 2002, and he was probably in his late 40s. And I was expecting, kind of like the big name guy, not to want to do anything.
Right.
But he bumped around like crazy for 20 minutes. That was a really good time.
Now, for you, those of you listening, Wild Bill Irwin was the goon in the WWE or WWF at the time. So if you didn't know that, he may have, maybe been a jobber in the WWF, but he was there and he could work. And I was on several shows with Bill. He actually trained some kids as well, but he was actually pretty cool. He's a cool dude and would be willing to go out there and actually work. So that was fantastic. Now, you said you were out of the ring. You've been out of the ring 18 months now. Ultimately, what was the decision that led you to say, this is it, this is my last match, I'm done with wrestling?
Well, it was a combination of things. It was having a family, wife and kids, trying to manage, set up schedules as far as like, okay, where am I going this weekend? I got to get a babysitter. What time? Babysitter cancels at the last minute, then you got to try and find a new one, or cancel the show. That happened a couple times. That and just injuries accumulating. The last few years, my back, after every match, I'd have to go to the chiropractor several times to get back in shape to be able to go to another match. And it just became one of those things where I just wasn't healing up, and I just needed time away. And it's been 18 months now, so we'll see if I ever decide to do it again.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like with me, obviously, I would love to step in the ring tomorrow and do it again. And my friends and people close to me, and Travis included, and everybody says, you need to do it again. And I would. If I got in the ring tomorrow, I think that I don't think I lost a single step. I actually think I'd be better today than I was the day I left professional wrestling, just with the fact that I absorbed so much more information from watching it and actually watching it from a different perspective now. And people still know that you're out there too, right? Obviously, Primetime Wrestling, a company that I worked for in Minneapolis, asked about you because they knew you're coming on this podcast, asked if you'd be interested in working for them. And I said, well, I'll, obviously let Red know that there's interest there, but he's a family man now too. So, and they understand that. But if you could, I guess, now you and I, obviously, before I ask this next question is, you trained me. I rode the road with you, learned the ropes in professional wrestling, but honestly, people would think that we had a lot of matches with each other, and we really hadn't. How many times do you think that you and I actually worked each other? Maybe 2 or 3 times? I don't think it was that much.
Yeah, I think we may have worked a couple times in tags, but I know we only had one singles match as far as I can recall.
Yeah, singles match in lacrosse.
Yep, for Seven Rivers, and it was like a tournament. And so the gimmick was, you won your first match, I won mine, and then after I won, the bad guy, you came in and took my knee out. So, our match, the storyline was fine for the one show, but we were pretty handicapped in that match because, you had to work my leg. So, we only had the one match, which is weird.
Yeah, no, I do remember a couple tag matches when you were, you tagging quite a bit when I first broke in, and I was tagging quite a bit too.
Yep.
We did that because, you guys had this finisher that people were excited about seeing all the time, and I don't remember what the hell it was called, but, I think you were actually on top of the rope with me in like a fireman's carry, right? And you would pretty much Mikanuku drive me over, and it was cool. It was a cool tag team finish. But yeah, I remember those matches, and I obviously remember that one singles match that we had. One thing that you and I have in common is the fact that we were in the ring with a lot of garbage wrestlers, especially, when I broke in, just people who shouldn't be in a wrestling ring, like wearing, literally, I can't sum it up any better than they were complete fucking shit. It was the worst of the worst. People that could have literally ended our careers before we even wanted to be done with professional wrestling. How many times did you sit there and think, at that point, Jesus Christ, what am I doing? Why am I here? This person might kill me. I said that, and I didn't even know the business that much, but how many times did you actually have to sit there and really question what the hell was going on?
Yeah, it was kind of a roll of the dice there for quite a few years, as far as you'd show up and hoping, okay, there's 5 guys in this locker room that I want to work with. I'm hoping I booked against one of these 5 guys, or that happened a lot. And when you do get booked with somebody that you can't trust, and that they don't know what they're doing, you just gotta really take control of it and really keep it simple as much as you can, and just try to protect yourself. Yeah,
Travis, I'll put this in perspective for you. It is like if you decide that you want to have a butler drive you to work every day, and that butler is a blind fucking gerbil driving your car. Would you feel comfortable getting in your car with somebody who can't see the goddamn road?
No, I wouldn't like that one bit. So whenever I play in my basketball league, it sounds like it'd be somebody that wouldn't know how to run one of our patented plays for our Spurs basketball team every Thursday night. I don't want that guy on our team.
Yeah, and if you can't run your play, the end result is you get dropped in your head somehow and you break your fucking neck. That would be the end result. That was the equivalent of the shit. And part of that is our fault because we allowed it to happen and we kept working these shows. But what people don't understand is when I was breaking into the wrestling business and Red and I were traveling the roads together, there was a big, thick line between Minnesota and Wisconsin as far as wrestling goes. There was the Minnesota crew, and that they really only used these guys, and they wouldn't use anybody else. It really took some time to work into that mold. Outside of once Steel Domain quit running, it was more of MPW, MIW. There were Neo Pro, and it took me a while to break into that mold. And when I broke into that mold, obviously good things happened because I was able to work other places. But the politics that were then were just obviously crazy ridiculous. And I remember, and I want to see if there's any similarities to when you broke in, Red. When I broke in, I was booked for Carmine down in Milwaukee, and I worked Jason Dukes. And I kid you not, the dude chopped me for 12 minutes straight in the match. And I was in the business maybe 6 months, so it was my orientation into the world of professional wrestling at Mid-American Wrestling. I never once complained. I took it like a man. My chest was bleeding, it was red, and it hurt like a son of a bitch. Did you have any moments like that where the guys, the veterans, would really lay a beating on you to toughen you up, or see if this is something that you even want to consider continuing doing?
Yeah, that was a lot of during camp. Like we would be in the ring, and if something wasn't going right, I remember one time we were working on just stomps, kicks, right, and Ken was watching, and the guy I was supposed to be kicking was Tom, who I didn't know very well. Tom Novak. He only wrestled a couple of years, but he was like 6'5" and like 280, and pretty solid. And I was like 160. So Ken tells Tom to lay down and tells me to kick him. Well, I'm worried that if I kick him too hard, he's gonna beat me up. So so I'm trying to be real light, and Ken's getting mad. So he's like, all right, lay down. And Ken gets in. First time I'd ever seen him in the ring. And he kicked, what out of me. And, so then I knew, okay, you can't be afraid of the other guy. You just got to go in and do it. And, but yeah, I mean, as far as working shows, when I first started out, Ken always had the new guys work with the new guys. And I think some of that was done, in a way to protect us from that, and in a way to, make sure that he had really good matches later on in the card. But no, I never actually. I'm trying to think. I'm sure it did happen. I'm sure it did, but I just can't remember right now.
Yeah, no, I mean, there's obviously being in professional wrestling since '98 and through 2012 or 2013. That's quite a few miles on that body. A lot of stories. Is there any particular story besides that one that really sticks out to you that's a funny moment in your wrestling career that just made it so fantastic to be part of the business?
Oh man, there's a lot of them, but I guess the stories that first popped in my head were kind of along the lines of the guys that should been buying a ticket and eating popcorn.
Right.
There were a couple of them where one was actually in the ring. Like I remember there was this one show. This was in 2002, and some guy just showed up, told the promoter some crazy story, which, I guess it's amazing that most people that the promoter would believe it. But he basically told him that he was trained by Spike Dudley and worked for ECW, and that. But he was never on TV. He was just working house shows. I had never seen the guy or heard of the guy before, and he was, obviously didn't look like a wrestler. And the promoter booked him against me in the heavyweight title match main event because he believed the ECW story. So we get to I meet the guy and we're talking, and he says, I couldn't believe he said this to me. I was just in complete shock, but he says, now I know most of these matches are scripted and predetermined, but our title match is predetermined?
Oh, Jesus Christ.
And I just looked at him in complete shock, yeah. And then, I was trying to think, I'm supposed to actually work a match with this guy? And then, later, the other guys were telling me, dude, you should have just told him no and just beat him up for real.
Yeah, put the boots to this jackass for being in there. I mean, Jesus Christ. Oh, our heavyweight championship match. No, it's fucking boxing. I'm Mike Tyson. I'm going to knock you out, you fucking moron. Christ. I mean.
What happened in that match? What happened in that match? Did it actually happen?
What's that?
Did that match actually happen?
Yeah, it did. It didn't last long. I at that point, I was still trying to really improve and have good matches and learn. So I tried to work with him at first, and when I realized that he just really didn't know what he was doing, and this is the first time he'd ever been in the ring, the match only lasted about 3 minutes. I just quickly, did it and got out of there.
And then that promoter didn't believe that story the next time he did.
I mean, if it's the promoter I'm thinking it is, and maybe it's not, I mean, he would believe absolutely fucking anything you'd tell him, but it could be somebody totally different. I don't know. But, I mean, there are absolute handful of promoters that were running shows that they obviously had no business running, and then they were also wrestling in their shows, and it was just a clusterfuck. I mean, that was what professional wrestling was. There were some really good shows, a lot of bad shows, just like it is today. There's a lot of good shows, a lot of bad shows out there. Red, I guess as far as this interview goes here in time-wise, we're going to have to wrap it up soon, but I just want to know, I mean, do you still watch the product today on TV? Do you keep up with wrestling when you can?
Yes, absolutely. I try to watch as often as I can, but, I got a third grader and a kindergartner, so I, got to help them with homework, and I always joke with them, like my third grader, she has homework every night, and I always ask her, so what do we got tonight? Geometry and Victorian age history, or what? So, no, math and reading, Dad.
You could teach reading. You could just put the closed caption on Monday Night Raw and have her read that to you the entire time. I mean, problem solved right there. Education 101. But the reason why I asked that is, I mean, what do you, and this is something, Travis and I get in the WWE talk quite a bit on this, and obviously with having you guys on here, but what do you see as the biggest difference in what you see on today's product compared to, 1998, 2000, 2003?
Oh, wow. I guess the athleticism seems to continue to get better. I really like the product today. I mean, there's a lot of guys that are really, really fun to watch. I'm a big fan of Brock Lesnar. I like Randy Orton, Dolph Ziggler. I like Sheamus. I mean, I like a lot of the guys today,
Yeah, and I always say, I mean, I think the biggest difference is just obviously the way we go about it now. Pro wrestling in the Attitude Era, there was chair shots, there was blood. We don't see that now. And to be honest with you, is there's a lot of people who complain about the product saying they wish they had more table spots, they wish they had more chair shots. Well, as a pro wrestler, I'm glad that those aren't there anymore because it wasn't fun going through. I mean, tables are one thing, but it wasn't fun taking chair shots. It never was fun. And, if you're able to clean that up and it's less risk on us as workers, I'm all for it. I know the fan base probably isn't too high on that, but it is. I think it's a good product today too. And the last question I'm going to ask you here, Red, is what is the one thing above everything else that you miss about professional wrestling?
Let's see. There's so much. I love being in the ring, doing what we do, and I think that's what I miss the most is actually being in the ring and working the crowd and trying to execute and have a really good match. It's really satisfying to know when after you leave the ring, like you got the reaction you wanted, everything went the way it was supposed to. It was just a really satisfying feeling. Yeah,
I'm with you. You can't replace that feeling you get when you perform in front of, even if it's a couple hundred people. I definitely miss that. I really miss the locker room a lot. The wrestling, when you're a wrestler, you're in a fraternity of basically brothers, and we are different people. I mean, that's putting it lightly. Like, to your average everyday person walking the street, they'd have no idea the shit that we know, the stuff that we've been through, and our mindset, and we are different. And to understand what professional wrestling is about, you really need to be part of it. And the reason why I was part of it for so long is a lot of it is because of you. So I really appreciate everything you did for me growing up and growing up through professional wrestling and showing me the ways and basically setting me straight and saying, Renny, grow the fuck up, and I did. And I was able to obviously accomplish some things that I thought were basically hoop dreams back in the day. So obviously I wish you nothing but the best moving forward. We're going to get you on here again. We'll tell more stories, but Family Man Red Lightning is, take care of the family, be that, help with the math, help with the reading. And if you get a chance, flip on some Raw once in a while or give us a call. We'll talk to you more about wrestling.
Oh, absolutely. Thanks a lot, Renny. You've turned out great. And you guys were a lot of fun to be around, and I'm just glad I was able to help steer you in the right direction.
Awesome, man. Well, this is Red Lightning, ladies and gentlemen, and he does have a Facebook page. It's Red Lightning, and obviously he updates that once in a while. Next week, we're going to have a different person on the show. He comes from ESPN Radio in Minneapolis, St. Paul. Phil Mackey, who is an ESPN Radio host, loves professional wrestling. We're going to talk to him about what it's like being a professional wrestling fan when you have a job like we're doing, but where a lot more people listen to you. So follow us on Twitter at Pencil Podcast. We're on iTunes, PodBean, Stitcher, and YouTube, and our website is pencilpodcast.com. Until next week, I'm Renny D, Dirt Travis Mester, and again, thanks to Red Lightning for joining us. We'll see you next week. Dolph Ziggler is here to show you the world, and I'm here to tell you about the world of professional wrestling. This is Renny D, an 11-year veteran of the professional wrestling business and host of The Pencil, a professional wrestling podcast available on iTunes, Stitcher, PodBean, and YouTube. Subscribe today and follow us on Twitter at Pencil Podcast for more inside information on the world of professional wrestling.